Hello, this is Ed Lasowski again, and welcome to Chapter 13, where we're going to talk about the importance of safety and health at work. In my many years in HR, and many years when I managed the overall safety department at our facilities, I can tell you without a doubt that of all the different responsibilities I've had over the years, being responsible for maintaining a safe working environment is by far the number one challenge I've ever had, because it's something you really have to take personal. You want every employee coming to work every day, going home the same way, just as fit as they were when they leave. And when an accident occurs, it can be very traumatic, of course, not only for the employee, for their coworkers, but for you as a manager with overall responsibility for your employee safety. It's something that you do take very personal. So as we go through this chapter, don't underestimate the value of really keeping your vigilance and your focus on ensuring you have a safe work environment. And we're going to talk some about the OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health Act, and the organization that oversees this safety process in the United States. And there's a good reason for that. It's a very serious issue, really at any company in any country. But if, for example, within the United States, the most recent data from OSHA shows that in 2016, there were 5,190 workers who were killed on the job. That's hard to grasp when you think about the impact. For example, 99 a week on average being killed, 14 deaths a day. So those 14 deaths a day are resulting in 14 managers having to go to the employee's home, talk to their spouse, their children, their parents, and inform them that their loved one was killed on the job that day. That is not a conversation you ever want to have with anybody's family. No doubt OSHA is making a difference. It's been in place for well over 40 years, and they've continued to partner with organizations such as labor organizations, state safety leaders. Companies, of course, are definitely focused on making their work environment far safer. And the net result of that is we've seen a threefold reduction in the number of deaths and accidents on the job. So, for example, while workers' deaths in 1970 were sadly resulting in approximately 38 per day, that's down to approximately 14 per day in 2016. That's still too many. Any more deaths than one is too many, or any deaths of one or more are too many, but at least we're making strides in the right direction. And of course, injuries and illnesses are down significantly as well. Now, as an HR professional, or if you're a line manager with additional responsibility for workplace safety, record keeping is a key component of adherence to OSHA law. Accidents that are reported need to be recorded correctly. If they result in lost time, that needs to be categorized correctly. And there are other requirements that go with OSHA regulations. So, for example, God forbid there's a death in your facility, that's required to be reported within 24 hours to the OSHA board. Record keeping is typically done by adding up the number of injuries over a time period being used. It might be monthly, quarterly, or annually, and then dividing that by 200,000 to minimize the wide swings you may get, because that way your numerator is much larger. And then you divide that by the total hours worked by all employees in that time period. So this formula is a standard that is designed by OSHA that's required for you to use. And again, as you report on a regular basis, your accident rates to the federal government through the OSHA group, uh, it may very well trigger an inspection. An employee, anonymously or otherwise, or an outsider who calls in a concern to OSHA might trigger an inspection. Inspection meaning where an OSHA inspector comes to your facility to do a walkthrough and review the overall safety of the plant. Those announcements, when they occur, are almost always unannounced. So the inspector will simply show up at your doorstep one day and say they are there for an inspection. Once you verify their credentials, that inspection would start. And of course, you're going to accompany the OSHA inspector as they walk through your facility and review the equipment, the machinery, as well as they have the right to talk to employees and get their thoughts as well. Things that you want to consider as a manager, looking at in your organization. And this list that I'm going to review has been updated to make it current with the times. One is some form of evaluating the type of stress employees feel on the job. When there's negative stress being something that creates someone to worry, to become nervous, that can be very detrimental to the overall health of your workplace as far as the work environment, but also very dangerous health-wise with the employee. Other potential issues are cumulative trauma disorders, so repetitive injury. If you have somebody doing repetitive type work, thousands of times moving their hand in a certain direction, that can result in an injury over time. No different than if you have a piece of machinery that is revolving and it begins to wear metal on metal, or our body is no different in some respects than that machine. It grating bone on bone or muscles become tired creates injuries. Many jobs nowadays require the use of access to a computer, use of a computer, and the video display terminals that we all are accustomed to can create and have health issues of their own. It might result in eye strain. If you're sitting for long periods of time, back aches. You may have muscle strains based on the posture that's being maintained. So again, even the use of a sit-down process like working on a computer has inherent safety risks that you need to be aware of. The level of chemical sensitivity. Some individuals have a higher sensitivity level than others. So again, knowing what the chemicals are that are being used in your facility, making sure employees are aware of what they are. And when you have cases of an employee that has an allergy to chemicals, it's incumbent upon you as the employer to remove them from that hazard. And sad to say, this is something that's relatively new in the last decade or so, at least into the forefront, and that is workplace violence as well as bullying, including cyberbullying. Workplace violence, it seems like we no sooner pick up the paper or look at the news and there's another incident of something horrific at a place of business. There are actions that can be taken to minimize that, primarily educating all employees on signs of someone who may be having issues, and then getting that person the help they need before that type of incident turns into something very tragic. And bullying, where it's one individual basically harassing another, is very serious. It obviously should never be tolerated in a workplace, and when it is seen, should be dealt with very swiftly and very aggressively to make sure it does not occur again. I mentioned chemicals earlier, and again, OSHA has standards on how chemicals should be stored as well as used. So, for example, the material safety data sheets, the MSDS sheets, are something that are required to be available for all employees, basically so that if they have a chemical they're using and they're wondering what are potential risks and work hazards in working with this chemical, they can look at the MSDS sheets and learn how to better handle that chemical safely. Many organizations now have smoke-free workplace policies, primarily because the danger of secondhand smoke from cigarettes is well known. So many organizations now have made the decision that their workplaces will be smoke-free. And again, drug-free workplaces, whether it be alcohol or other type of illegal or legal drugs, many organizations, if not most, also require employees adhere to their drug-free policy and ensure that, because doing so helps increase the level of safety while the person's performing the job and minimizes the potential for an accident. You know, I mentioned repetitive motion injuries earlier. Again, the cumulative trauma disorder. The repetitive motion is most commonly the type that you see. So if you have a facility that has employees making the same movement, you know, repeatedly over time, you definitely should look into that job to see if there's different changes that can be made, either through automation, through changing the workflow, so it breaks up the monotony of the job, to minimize the cumulative trauma disorders. And again, video display terminals, there's other ways of approaching that as well. Again, work variation, where a person's not sitting at a screen for long periods of time, assigning other type work to that person, that breaks, and some kind of form of job rotation greatly helps. And the same with chemical and fragrance sensitivities. There are people that are allergic to certain chemicals. It's a normal human reaction. So obviously, if and when you find out about those type of allergies, then you want to reduce the employee's exposure to those chemicals as much as you possibly can. You know, I mentioned workplace violence before. Again, key component here is training. Helping associates understand, number one, if they feel that, you know, they're having challenges in life, let them know where they can go to talk with someone, typically a counselor at your facility or an outside counselor. Educate your employees that if they see somebody who they believe is troubled, you know, let them know you definitely want them to come forward and share that with their observations. Because if they don't, there's no point in sharing their observations after a horrific workplace violence act takes place. The time to do so is before an individual snaps and takes some drastic action that's irreversible. So again, you want to educate your employees to let them know that by all means they should and need to come forward when they see something on the part of an employee that needs addressing. Same with workplace bullying and cyberbullying. That should never be tolerated in any organization. It's important that employees understand that. It's important that employees know you want them to report it and it's their responsibility to do so. And of course, their responsibility not to engage in that type of behavior. You know, a few other key concerns for employees, and number one is employee privacy. With the advent of the internet and the advent of access to computers, employee identity theft is a major issue across the globe. And there are many ways now that online thieves can access it. One of the easiest way is to get inside an organization's firewall. So it might be something as innocuous as or as simple as accessing an employee's email, because now that gets them inside the firewall, and then from there they can begin to chip away at other HR systems that may exist in the facility. So stealing someone's identity has a host of negative impact, whether it be someone's financial banking information, you know, a falsification of a passport, driver's license, social security records. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So ensure you have a good process to be as secure as possible in keeping your employees' data confidential. And, you know, another last but not least issue is, you know, unfortunately in our world today, terrorism is something we all need to be aware of. And no organization is immune. So we all need to be proactive in reviewing our policies, reviewing our safety procedures, making sure we at least have stop guards in place to minimize the potential for someone to enter our facility and bring harm to our employees. Last side I'll cover here before you go on and review the remainder on your own in the chapter is number one, for you as an HR professional or as a line manager, know your OSHA laws. Know what they are, be familiar with them, and understand the effective safety practices you have a responsibility to maintain at your place of work. Ensure you're providing safety training to all your employees. We should never assume employees already know the right thing to do, because too often employees may choose to take a shortcut trying to do their job well, but in the result of that shortcut could be a very serious injury they cause to themselves or others. So provide that safety training to employees on a regular basis and continue to do so. You as an individual, you as a representative of your organization should make a commitment to maintaining a safe, healthy work environment for all your employees. You take it personal. You walk around your work areas you're responsible for. You talk with and get to know your employees. You look at the job from their perspective, saying, what can I do to make this job safer? Again, make that as a personal commitment, and in doing so, your employees will see a key fact that is critical in any job, and that is that you as a manager care. You care about them, you care about their health, you care about their safety. With that said, get employees involved in helping with the safety process. It's everybody's job to maintain a safe work environment, and especially everyone's job to make sure their work environment is safe. So getting employees involved in the process gives them some ownership of the issue and allows them firsthand to be able to take action to minimize any safety concerns that exist. Easy way to do this is simple. Everyone has a job description, or should. Ensure that everybody's job description has safety built into that job description, that they commit to maintaining and enforcing an overall safe work environment. So again, a lot more about safety, OSHA, and health hazards at work in this chapter in our textbook. We'll talk about it quite a bit this week in our classroom. And again, as always, I'll see you in the classroom.